All right, good morning, CornCon. Thank you, Rob. As Rob spoiled the entry, my name is Sean. This talk is delivering offensive insights to the Blue team. So good afternoon, CornCon. It is a pleasure to be here. If you are expecting a different talk, then you might be in the wrong room. So, as I was saying, my name's Sean. Some people call me Adware because of a little prank that a certain con organizer pulled earlier this year. So I am one of the organizers of BurbSec. Thank you, BurbSec. If you are not familiar with BurbSec, we are one of the largest cybersecurity networking groups in the country. We're I think 1,400 people strong on our Discord. We have 7 meetups just in the Chicagoland area. We have meetups additionally in Las Vegas and one over in Galway, Ireland. And then we are also having some friends try to start one up in the Twin Cities. So if you're out there, check that out too. On top of that, I am a senior security engineer at a pretty cool music streaming service called SoundCloud. So this talk is all about, are you finding the same thing every single time you engage with a client and you do a pen test with them, and it's the same exact findings you had last year. It's the same exact findings and basically carbon copy of the same report. Okay, maybe you fixed some lows, but you still pretty much haven't fixed most of what has been going on. So why do they keep asking for people to pen test them if they aren't actually going to go and fix anything that they have? Well, it's probably mandated, right? It's probably insurance companies. Maybe there's some regulation if they're considered an important entity under NIS2. Maybe they have contracts with clients, and those clients are going out and requiring that, hey, every year you have to go and do a pen test. And I've seen plenty of companies that go and get that contract requirement, and then the clients never actually ask for the pen test report except for the first time, even though it's in the contract. You might find that those findings and quality of the pen test go down continually every time that holds true. So this talk is all about, instead of just finding the same thing again, why don't we actually go and we work with the Blue team, we build a relationship with them, and we help them help themselves, because they're probably not going to do it on their own, in all honesty. Right? I hear this all the time between BurbSec, different BSides all across the country, even at DEF CON. I hear time and time again, pen testers are bored. They're finding the same results. They just don't know how to deal with the Blue team, how to get the Blue team to really help themselves. All right, so why? Right? Why do we want to engage with them? Why do we want to build a relationship with them? Well, you're probably bored. You're probably sick of doing the same thing and getting the same results and writing the same reports. You probably even have like a document where you can just copy and paste all the definitions. That does not sound like a lot of fun. It doesn't sound like why most people get into pen testing, right? You want to go out there, you want to crack some vulns, you want to find some issues, you want to help people prevent themselves from getting hacked. But if you're finding the same thing, they definitely aren't helping themselves. So this is a survival analysis from Cypher showing how long it takes for half of findings to be closed out. They found that 3.2 years, those findings, that's the mean time to resolution of a finding, 3.2 years. And honestly, the criticals are pretty much doing the vast majority of that. For highs, lows, mediums, those are all out to like 5 years on average for just 50% of them to be closed out. It is outrageous. So, if we work together, if we help build relationships with the Blue team, we can really do something a lot more interesting than just the formulaic pen tests that you're used to, that you're doing time in and time out, right? It's pen tests should be the opportunity for blue teams to come up to pen testers and say, this is what I need. They aren't listening to me. I really need you to show them why this is such a big problem. That way they give me the resources I need to actually go out and fix that. So it's all about being tactical with the blue team. You got to help them pick a target, find something realistic, something that's been broken, and focus in solely on that target instead of just doing a broad spectrum test against them. And then you help demonstrate to them why it needs to be fixed and how it can actually impact the business itself, not just in hyper-technical terms, but in business terms as well. So all the strategic planning, you have to limit the scope, you have to focus on the sticky issue, and then enumerate on it. How does it spread? What else can you do with that as the starting point, instead of spending all of your time and your budget doing, like I was saying, a broad spectrum analysis against the company as a whole. So then the blue team's job is going to be find what that means to the business. And oftentimes that's going to be what the incident could potentially cost the business, because executives kind of don't care about things unless you put big money sign, big dollar signs out in front of it. So limiting the scope and finding the best target isn't just about the biggest target. It's not about the flashiest target. It's about something that the blue team believes they're on the verge of getting fixed, but they're just haven't convinced exec for the budget for that yet. Because that makes it a realistic thing. It starts the ball rolling, and then once the ball is in motion, it becomes easier and easier to work with execs to do it. But if you pick the biggest thing, if you pick the mountain of a problem, oftentimes they're just going to dismiss it. The cost is going to be too high. It's going to be too much of an escalation in the budget for your department, and it won't help the ball move forward. Unless sometimes you really do need the moon. Sometimes you really need the big, big issue, because if an executive is going to go to jail because of this issue, if you're going to be fined more revenue than your company makes, then you really, really probably should fix that issue, and you should focus your resources on fixing that. But most of the time, it's probably not going to be that big issue that you need to tackle. Enumeration, right? You're going to help the blue team by finding each business sector that's affected. You're going to go an in-depth pen test with that as the origin point, and you're going to tell them that they need to focus on the business itself. You, the pen tester, focus on the infrastructure, the actual technical things. The blue team needs to understand if one database impacts multiple different departments, how many business sectors, what the actual impact looks like to the business. Because each pivot, even if it's just a minor thing to you, it could affect the CRM system as well. It could affect all sorts of different applications, all sorts of different clients. So it's really important for the blue team to go and understand how their business actually generates revenue and how different systems at their business are interconnected. So show them where it hurts, because executives really, really do not care in the slightest if their company gets ransomwared. They don't care if a database gets breached. That is gibberish to them. What they care about is if sales decrease, they care if subs drop, they care if click-through rates for their ads slow down. All of those things are things that they actually care, that they can translate to monetary impact to themselves. Those are all revenue impacting events. Because at the end of the day, revenue impacting events are going to be the result of a breach. So it really helps to find the cost, to stick some real dollar signs on it, even if it's just an estimate, because budget from the business is usually spent on revenue, right? They either want to spend the money to increase the amount of revenue they're getting or to decrease potential losses, things like churn rates of customers. They will actively spend money to decrease that. So who predicts how the business performs? Who predicts how much revenue each department is generating? Who predicts what kind of churn rate will happen? That's all going to be the financial planning and analysis departments. Even if your company doesn't have statisticians, if they don't have people who could normally compile these statistics for you, they very likely still have an FP&A department or even an FP&A service that they're using. So if you work with the finance department, you might be able to find who those people are, who that service is, and then you can use that to base your time, your impact time times the generation of revenue over time. So if a service is down for X number of hours, they'll know how much an hour of service down costs, and then you know how much time, hopefully, it takes to recover, right? So they already did a lot of the massive work for this section of work. All you have to do is figure out how long it's going to take to fix, how long potentially it will take to fix, and we all know that statistics probably going to be a little bit made up, a little bit hope and wishes, but it gives you a starting point to actually go and find something. And having a number on paper that looks not great, having some basis for it is going to be a lot better than having no starting point at all. So you want to compile your executive summary, and you want them to work with you. You want the blue team to work with you so that you provide your executive summary, your technical documentation, and they are going to go and provide supplemental information for what it means to the business. Because obviously, if you're a pen tester, if you're an external pen tester, you probably don't know that much about the business. They probably don't want to tell you all that much about all of this. So you aren't going to be the person compiling all that revenue information. They're going to be, and they're going to help supplement your report. And it's really, really important to help them phrase it as they need to understand what it's going to take to fix it, how much it will cost them if they do not fix it. Those are going to be the two most impactful things that they can add to your report. So, thanks so much for listening. It's been a great talk. Oh, you had a question? I actually have that on my slide, but the talk's not over. That was a joke slide, sorry. Right, so my question to myself was, how do you actually get there? How do you craft this plan? How do you work with your blue team clients to actually get any of this done, right? How do you move the needle? It's clear communication of needs. So, orphan services are something that I've found constantly. It is constantly an issue. At companies I've been at, I've found probably 6 business critical services that were completely orphaned, that had no one maintaining them, but they generated fairly large amounts of revenue for the company, or they were just essential middle services for the internal workings of a company's application, right? There's one that I had that I'd find it and I'm like, this is a huge security issue. This is really, really easily exploitable. And then I start digging through Jira and different systems, and I'm like, wait, people know about this. Wait, it has been exploited in the past? Wait, we've known about this for 8 years, but it's never been fixed? And then I'm looking at all the explanations, I'm looking at all the people that have been CC'd on this, and I'm like, yeah, no wonder it doesn't get fixed. It's gibberish. It doesn't sound intelligible to any executive, and it keeps being prioritized at the bottom of the list because no one's been explaining it to the executives that they've CC'd what it actually means to the business, what it actually means if this gets leaked. If this gets leaked, you can be distributing classified information. You can be publicly addressing things. You made all sorts of really, really significant issues. And it just gets stuck in backlog hell because while the security team understands how much of an impact it is, they keep using technical jargon that gets hand-waved as, okay, we'll put it 3 sprints from now, and then we all know something that's planned for 3 sprints from now never happens. So it's about phrasing things differently. It's about ensuring that people understand why they should care and what the technical jargon you're using means to the business from an executive perspective. Because while I know no one here probably became a pen tester for their people skills, right? Maybe if you're really into social engineering, you did. But I think most of us just want to sit in a nice dark room. Isn't this room so nice and lovely and dark? It feels so much easier on my eyes. We came to sit here in a dark room and hack away and find some cool technical issues. But if you really work with ensuring you are communicating clearly, you can really level up your pen testing skills. You can really utilize it as an additional opportunity to level up your attacks, level up your social engineering, and just level up your career in general. Right? Because once you start moving the needle, once these boring vulnerabilities that make up 99% of your day actually start maybe getting fixed, then you'll be there to find more interesting issues. And, right, are we here for the really cool, interesting issues, or are we here for the paycheck? There is nothing wrong with being here for the paycheck, especially if it's a decent paycheck, right? I have no issues with anyone that wants to do that. But I find, at least, that keeps me significantly more engaged if I really enjoy what I do. So, working with your client through your pre-engagement, it's really important to clearly define what the goal is, what is the risk, right? Do you want to close this massive vulnerability? Do you want to justify additional staff members for your team so that you can spot an issue earlier or resolve it faster? Do you want to defend PII because your executive might go to jail if you don't fix this issue and then all of these documents get leaked? Right? And then the next step is to scope it. What is the specific limits of what I should be doing? What should I touch? What should I absolutely not touch? What is really delicate? And if I touch it, it will completely fall over, and then there'll be an actual outage, not just a pen test. Then it's really important to target your impact. You have to create revenue impacting event targets, because you need to ensure that you are impacting enough potential revenue in your simulation, in your pen test, that you'd then be able to go ahead and justify and support your reasoning to succeed with your goal, right? Because executives are gamblers. Executives really don't care if they're going to face a $100,000 loss, if it's going to cost them $95,000 to fix the issue, right? They're going to say, no, I'd rather invest that in generating more revenue. And they'll take that bet year after year because they're like, it's not affected us for the past 5 years. It probably won't affect us for the next 5 years. They're just going to tell you, no, let's skip it. Maybe we'll find some budget for it next year. But if it really significantly exceeds that, if it's going to cost you $100,000 to fix it and it prevents a $30 million outage, yeah, that is something that they would be much more likely to be willing to consider. You have to ensure that the pen test you're engaging in is going to be clearly defined enough, right? You don't want a black box. You already know that you're specifically targeting something. So you need to understand what it is you need to target, what it is that you can't touch, and what it's going to take to pass that goal to ensure that you are digging in deep enough. And then you probably also don't want a white box, because if an executive realizes, oh, you're just handing them all this information, all these things, then that's going to be just ammunition for them to go ahead and deny your budgetary request. So, what is a pen tester's goal, right? For a blue teamer, a pen tester's goal is hopefully, probably, to help you find a potential revenue impacting event so you avoid a resume generating event, right? Those are no fun. It is better to hopefully remain employed at your employer. But yeah, at the end of the day, you don't want to be the one blamed for something. And if you do get blamed for it, you want it well documented on paper that, no, I told you exactly this was going to happen. So, how do you know when you're ready for the engagement? You need to be able to clearly read back the goals and objectives of the blue team you're working with. You need to ensure that you're establishing really clear boundaries and limitations. If you're going to be touching production infrastructure, you need to ensure that you are not going to have an actual accidental revenue impacting event during your pen test, right? You don't want to accidentally cause something because this one service will completely crash if anyone even pings the thing, right? I used to work at a company many years ago where we had a server that managed our entire lighting and internal speaker systems. It was a museum. And so it was really, really important to have the museum correctly lit with the right light temperatures and everything like that, the right ambient music. If that server turned off, when it booted up, you had to reinstall the operating system. So if you're going to be touching production infrastructure, you have to ensure that you aren't going to accidentally turn the thing off. It's also really, really important that you have clear lines of communication, because if you do an oopsie, if you do break something, you want to tell them as soon as possible. You want to be able to page them and say, wake up, fix this thing right now. I did an oopsie. And then again, you want to ensure that your client is satisfied with what you expect to be able to do, that you think you'll be able to support their goal enough. So you have to really ensure that you've scoped in enough to actually justify that. So, the actual test. Don't tell the blue team, right? Some people are going to be coordinating with you, but hopefully they don't tell absolutely everyone. And then I've added all the phases in here. This is not really the point of the talk, the phases of a pen test. I've added them in here just in case people in the audience weren't familiar with it. But yeah, I'm keeping this section quite brief because, you know, you start off with your intelligence gathering, which can be anything from phishing people, pinging things, mapping infrastructure, right? You want to do your threat modeling, you want to analyze what kind of vulnerabilities you're facing, what you're finding, and then you actually do the exploitation, and then you get to your post-exploitation phase. Yeah, again, during the engagement, keep lines of communication ready, stick to your planned level of radio silence. Yeah, no, it's a short section. It's not the focus of this talk in particular, but it felt weird to leave it out completely. So, your post-attack huddle. You're going to want to verify all of your potential impact. You're going to want to ensure that you're using the correct language in your executive summary, and you're going to want to note strengths. So, client verification. Verify how each app and service was actually possibly affected by what you were able to found. Have them go out and map it and say, okay, yes, this was achievable, or no, that actually wouldn't have been achievable, so we have to strike that from the report. Do your due diligence. Don't just look like a fool in front of your executives or other technical stakeholders. Always account for secondary impacts. If one service goes out, it might fuel a different linked service, which might fuel a different linked service. That might then fuel a client service. The effect and scope of these chain of events can be significantly more far-reaching than originally anticipated, and that can be a really great way of really scoping out your entire cost of a potential incident. And then you want to create a clear visual chain of events for your executive team. Doing it on paper, right? The pen testers are going to go, you're going to go and you're going to write down all the technical things you've done, and then the blue team needs to go and supplement what that means from an executive perspective, what that means from a client perspective. Because if you're able to diagram all those effects clearly on paper, on a nice graphic document, it's going to have a significantly higher impact on executives than if you were to just put the chain of events bulleted in high-level technical jargon, right? that their eyes are going to glaze over if you just send them a chain of events that they have no capability of understanding. So there are a couple stages of a attack, right? No, no, this is just AI generated nonsense. I was really amused by the nonsense it generated. Um, right, you got the WebZing, the website functions. I was using Gemini to create some amusing, to give me some ideas about how to structure like the series of events, because I didn't want to take anything, actually from my business. I feel like they wouldn't like it if I just posted potential past vulnerabilities out on my slides. So I went and was using Gemini to find some ideas, and this kept sticking with me. I made way better graphics, but this one just really, really stuck with me. You have to ensure that in your report you're using targeted language. If you play to your audience, it will have a significantly better impact, right? Every company has an internal dialect. They have ways of speaking to each different department, right? If your networking team is called your systraf team, your executives are familiar with the term systraf, right? They've probably heard that in passing and ingested it. So if you use internal language, if you use the internal names of your servers that they might be familiar with, of your services that they might be familiar with, incorporating those into an executive summary makes it a lot more digestible and then really increases the amount of impact that report will have on executives. So it's basically social engineering, right? If you use that targeted language, if you incorporate that, you're basically social engineering them to be more receptive of the summary you're presenting. And you also want to note all of the strengths that you found from clients, right? If you found a blue team did something really well, you really, really want that in a report. Because if a report is just doom and gloom, if a report is just everything is on fire, your blue team is absolutely horribly incompetent, if that's what an executive is reading, they're going to say, why am I even hiring this blue team? I should just fire them all and go to an MSSP, right? If it's just doom and gloom, it doesn't make them feel all that good, right? You want to brag about the team and maybe even make the executive feel a little bit proud, right? Oh, you hired such a great blue team. You are such a amazing CEO. Yes, you should absolutely listen to these people because you hired them, right? If they feel good about it, if they feel, okay, I'm doing good, it's just this one issue I have, they're a lot more likely to actually give them the funding that they need than if they were just everything is on fire. That doesn't impact people as much as, oh, everything is fantastic, it's just this one little thing we need, right? I put in here brag and beg. I feel like that's a good term for it. You want to hype yourself up a bit and say, we just need this one thing, boss, and then we'll be doing amazing. Right? You want to wrap it up eventually. You hand it over to the blue team, and if you're a pen tester, you can only do so much, right? You hand it over, and you say goodbye. Maybe you can find some extra billables somewhere, but for the most part, they actually have to take the report. They actually have to present it to exec, and they have to go ahead and say, hey, this is what we did. This is what you paid for. And they have to go and do their own job, right? You can only equip them for success. They're the ones that have to run with it and do it. All right, this is the real, actual end of my talk. All right, any questions?
How do you learn the terms that they use in the business? Are you talking with the blue team right before you make the report, or is this something you're stealing from their confluence?
It would be really amazing if you stole it from their confluence. That will if you can get into their Confluence, you will move significantly further and faster, um, especially if they're hard coding database credentials in there. Fun things like that. Um, no, this is as you wrote the executive summary. You go present it to the blue team first, ask them for any adjustments, get their feedback at the reception, and then maybe they can help you incorporate some of those terms in just to play it better, because this is basically a performance piece that you're putting together for really specific audience. All right, any other questions?
What's the most challenging thing to get across to executives that you see regularly?
I think the most challenging thing to get across to them is how much of a business is really based on tech. A lot of people think, oh, we sell a physical product, so it's not all that tech driven. Okay, but how do you sell your physical product if your website is down, if your CRM service is down, if your order filling system is down, if you can't ship product because you can't print shipping labels? That's going to impact your business. That's going to piss off customers. Yes. Yeah, I think the biggest question you can just start off with right out of the gate is kind of what's harshing your mellow? What is the biggest issue that you're facing? What do you need from me? Is really a great question. Anyone else?
I think for smaller companies, when they get a pen test done, they just want to go right to like, let's hop in a call with the CTO, the IT team, and the one security person. Do you say like, no, let's hold up. I need to have a conversation with the security guy first, or do you just kind of go along with whatever they feel is how they want to see it?
It's a good question. Usually I try to build out, usually I try to get like a view of what stakeholders I need to speak to, and then request that information from them. Um, yeah, I would just work with them to say what additional stakeholders do they feel should be in this meeting, and then try to build out that that way. Um, but for the most part, it's mostly going to be probably you're interacting with the head of security, and maybe one or two other security engineers, in my experience.
So if you were actually looking to hire new individuals and you're going to map them to the typical stuff that you see in industry, how when you're presented with someone who's not typical, who's atypical experience, a hacker off the street that's been breaking in, that doesn't abide by your nine or your categorization of things to really add value. How do you translate that to the CEO of the? How do you translate that in value? Like, hey, this has enough credentials, but they can work for DARPA, but they can't work for
Mm,
you.
that's it's a really good question. It's a really, really pressing question in the industry, I think. A lot of companies just rule out people if they don't have a 4-year degree, um, and it's it is quite hard to explain that to executives. But I do feel like it's been turning lately. Um, I recently hired a absolutely incredible product security engineer. he only had 1 year of security experience. He had 2 years as a developer, and we hired him into a senior product security engineer position. And my SVP was like, this guy doesn't seem like this resume looks like it doesn't have enough experience. How are they going to do this? And then I said, instead of us arguing about this, why don't you go and speak to them yourself and see how truly in depth this person's knowledge is, how truly far they've gone to build a massive, massive knowledge system. But if I were to speak to a non-technical executive, my SVP is lifelong developer, so he does have enough technical background to do that interview himself. And he actually came out of that interview and said, hire him right now before he accepts a different offer.
That's good.
Yeah, I was really, really happy to hear that he thought the same thing. But if it was a non-technical executive, I would tell them that we are a really dynamic industry. I would probably pull examples of people that I know that have music backgrounds, that were touring musicians and are now friends of mine, friends of a few of the people in the audience. Johnny Christmas, touring musician. Currently, he's the global head of red teaming at Kraft Heinz. I would say it is really standard in our industry to have a non-standard background, and personally, I think it's a little bit of a red flag if you don't have at least a little bit of a standard deviation as a background in security.
And then to that end, how often do you see your CEOs or your other people actually attaining and wanting more women? Because I think we've seen enough of the 45 to 60 white dudes. I get it. I mean, Johnny and I are there too, among other people I know. But do the other executives see the value of taking on a recent high school art degree lady from an art, like art college, who's having more of a open tablet to learn infosec than some person? Do you find that it's difficult or is it hard?
It depends on the executive. I am really lucky in my current role. I'm really lucky in a few of my past roles where creating a more diverse company has been really, really incredibly important. My current employer does a biannual survey. If you're comfortable, they ask people to fill it out. It's not mandatory at all, but they want to continually gauge where the company is, what our gender dynamics look like, what they look like for different departments. And the CEO, we recently had a tiny decrease, or not that recently, at the start of the year. It's changed since then, but we had a tiny decrease in the gender diversity of one of our engineering department, and our CEO talked about how they took that as a really, really big hit against themselves, and how they really wanted to reevaluate how they were hiring people so they could ensure that they tip the balance in the opposite direction, and continue to create a broader and more diverse team, because more diverse teams, more diverse backgrounds create significantly different interactions than you would have on a daily basis. They are incredibly important, and they can help you find things and figure things out that you wouldn't have been able to before. So I think it's really important. I think it's also really important that sometimes we are really lucky and we can choose where we work, and when I am able to choose where I work, I always significantly value a company with a strong internal culture, with a strong and diverse team. That is something that I've always tried to look for when I've been able to prioritize that over just having a job and maintaining my house and keeping my kids around. When I'm able to prioritize that, that is something I absolutely strive for. And so I think it's something that as employees, we have power. We can often choose who we work for, and I do think when we're able to, it is something that we need to help enforce as part of company culture. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time.